This video has a focus on using melody tracks in Songtrix. See the drums track video first for an introduction to the editing operations we will be using. There are 3 melody tracks in Songtrix. One of them is actually called melody, but the other 2, riff and bass, work in exactly the same way. Usually you would put the tune of your song in the melody track, the accompaniment in the riff track, and the bass line in the bass track. But any of these tracks can use any note range or instrument voice. In fact, the only real difference is that the melody track is linked to the lyrics track for adding words to a song, but we look at that in the next video. All 3 melody tracks appear in piano roll format, with the bar and beat numbers along the bottom, and a piano keyboard on the left-hand side to show which note goes with which line in the grid. To help you stay oriented when editing and creating notes, the line you are hovering over is highlighted on the piano, and a tooltip appears, showing the note and octave number. Melody tracks are usually shown as a single segment that contains all bars in the song, but they can be split into smaller segments or rejoined in exactly the same way as drums and rhythm tracks. Melody events are created by selecting a tool and dragging across the grid. The layout of events creates a visual picture of the shape of our melody. Melody events can be created in parallel to produce harmonies and even chords, although it's often easier to use the rhythm track for those. Don't forget you can use the middle mouse button to audition the pitch of any line and make sure you have the right spot. The melody track is indicated with the icon of a trumpet, but with the track setup window, we can change its voice to any of over 200 instruments and synthetic sounds. As you can see, there are many choices, including pianos, organs, guitars, just about any instrument you can imagine. For now, let's select the trombone. Since we are trying to sound like a trombone, we can improve this melody to make it sound more realistic and expressive. We can adjust the velocity or loudness of individual notes to add the emphasis of a natural playing technique. As notes become louder, they are shown in a darker shade of colour. We can also add special effects to our melody with event types other than these simple notes. We create these by selecting a different tool from the toolbox, or we can convert existing events with a right click and change to. Bend note events are particularly good for brass instruments to mimic the flattening of pitch at the start and end of the breath. The bend curve appears on top, which we can grab by one of these 3 handle points to bend it up or down. Let's do the same for the next note. 3 handles is not really enough here, as it makes the bend too slow. So we can show the Event Properties panel and increase the precision to 5 points for finer adjustment. We can also change the type of an event from the Properties panel. Another event type is the vibrato note, which is good to provide relief on long event durations. The zigzag shows the extent of the vibrato, and we can adjust the dynamic and depth of the effect in the Properties panel. It usually sounds best increasing as the note is held. While each event can have only one effect, we can combine effects if we reduce the velocity of an event to 0. This now has a transparent background to show it is just an effect without a note. We can now move it to where we want on any line. And so with Songtrix we can craft an expressive performance which is then automatically transferred to the more limited but familiar world of staff notation for printing and playback, giving us the best of both worlds. You may have noticed that our melody track has a note range of only 2 octaves on the piano keyboard. Here, the dotted key indicates which note is middle C. Most melodies fit within this, but melody tracks can be extended to over 10 octaves, again using track setup. On the Note Range page, we can see that the track is currently based around the treble clef, with the 2 notes showing the limits. The shaded area indicates the note range already in use by our existing events. These arrow buttons nudge the note limits up or down by roughly half an octave at a time. Let's say we want to extend the bottom end of the range downwards, then we would press this one. And when we return to the track, we find that middle C is no longer the lowest note. Since the note range is now bigger than the editing area, we have a vertical scroll bar to move it with. Or we may want to zoom to height so that we can see it all at once. Let's move on to the bass track. We can see it is the same, apart from the change in colour, the note range, and the instrument voice. The same event types are available, and although this track has an acoustic bass icon instead of a trumpet, we find exactly the same options in the track setup. To demonstrate, let's add a few bass notes to go with our melody. The bend note also works well for guitars and basses to give the effect of sliding the fingers up or down the strings. This time I will use the Properties panel to increase the bend limit to an interval of a fifth to create a greater slide effect. And then to the riff track, which works exactly the same way. Notice that if a tool but no events are selected, the Event Properties window shows the tool defaults instead. Here we can adjust the properties that will apply to each new event as we create it. Other tools have extra properties. All of these tracks have been notated in staff view, where the colour of the staff symbols matches each track. This short musical passage has shown how quickly we can put expressive melodies together. We finish with a guitar solo from Angel's Advice, which you can download from the Chord Wizard network. Here you will see many of the techniques we have covered being used in a final production.